Welcome into the Pro Football Network Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Dallas Robinson. He's Jay Morrison, as always. How you doing today, Jay?
I'm good, Dallas. I have my hat on to prevent the falling sky from giving me a concussion. I mean, Bengal fans are, I don't know, they're a little apoplectic right now. It's not good.
It's a disaster in Cincinnati right now. There's no other way around it. The Bengals are 0-2 for the second consecutive season. But it's not like last year because Joe Burrow's hurt again. It's, where do we go from here? We've seen the Bengals come out of these 0-2 holes before, but Joe Burrow's injury puts a whole nother cloud over things. I think the Bengals obviously fell to the Ravens on Sunday. Joe Burrow, I think he looked pretty good. We talked about it a little before the show, but I think he looked pretty good. And it's unfortunate that he got re-injured because it looked like he had begun to look like the quarterback he was last year and kind of play more like he did when he was an elite option last season. And then just at the end of the game, he retweaks that calf injury. And now it seems like things are very up in the air for next week. And we don't know if Joe Burrow's going to play. And
yeah,
I don't know. It's a very tough situation for the Bengals right now. It's what are your initial takeaways, Jay, from the week, from where things stand with Burrow and how things look going into week 3?
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he looked totally comfortable yet in the pocket, but he did look a lot better. And that first drive, that throw he threw to Irv Smith that should have been a 28-yard gain on third down. Instead, Irv can't get the second foot down. It ends up being a 3-and-out. That was a terrific throw. And really, if they hit that, then they're in Baltimore territory or right at midfield. I can't remember where the exact yard line was, but you could see things getting rolling. And really, the only bad series was the second one. It was a terrible 3-and-out. I mean, there was a 1-yard mix and run, a screen to Chase for no yards, and then I think it was a pass to Travion Williams for a yard, and that went nowhere. But you could see he looked better. They were utilizing the middle of the field. They were hitting Higgins over a lot of crossers over the middle, and Tyler Boyd. There was one where he kind of winced a little bit. It was call it a hospital ball where he hit Boyd over the middle high, and he got chopped down pretty good, but he made the catch. I thought Boyd played really well. The takeaway, I mean, you mentioned it, that the question about week 3 is there in my mind. It's weeks 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, all the way to the end. Is this gonna be something he deals with all year?
Yeah.
And even he didn't have an answer for that. It was a different Joe Burrow in the press conference after the game, and he's normally, everything's gonna be fine. I'm fine. I'll fight through it. And you could tell there was some concern in his voice, and there was some doubt about what's this going to look like the rest of the year. You talk about last year's 0-2. It was every week getting better and better and healthier and healthier. Exactly. Just the nature of coming back from an appendectomy. This is totally different. So I do. There is a lot of cause for concern there. And now we're not going to know anything. The Bengals don't have media access on Tuesday as we record this. They don't have it on Wednesday either because of the Monday night game. So it'll be Thursday before we see what exactly Joe Burrow is doing in practice. We were all kind of joking yesterday. We're a bunch of men standing around judging the gait of another man. Is he walking briskly? Is he limping? And he did. He looked good. But, I mean, walking through the locker room is obviously much different than playing NFL football. But he didn't have anything on the calf. And he did seem to be walking okay. But obviously, there's going to be a lot more treatment that has to be done. There's Zach talked about there's doctor's visits are going to have to be done, and they're going to take the recommendation of the doctors. I'm sure if you ask Joe, he's like, I'm playing, but that would not be the smart thing to do if it's recommended against it. So it's wait and see. It's you look at this stretch of schedule and Rams, Cardinals, Titans. Not in that order, Titans and Cardinals, and Seahawks. And it's like, it's not a murderer's row. But I don't know, if however long Joe's out, can Jake Browning win you a game?
Right.
Is Will Greer ready yet? I mean, he's been here for a while. There's a lot of questions, and 0-2 is bad. 0-3 would be damning. 2.4% of teams that have started 0-3 have made the playoffs. So big game Monday night, but a lot of questions before we get to that.
It's just really unfortunate because I thought Joe Burrow was like really layering some nice throws across the middle of the field, hitting tight windows, that we definitely didn't see in week 1. The advanced metrics don't show it. The Bengals offense was still bottom 3rd in EPA per play. Burrow was bottom 3rd in EPA per dropback. I think that's going to happen when you throw a interception right near the goal line and sacrifice those points. that was like the one truly horrible play that he made on Sunday. But I really do think, and he looked mobile too. I think he looked pretty decently mobile and showed a little bit of movement outside the pocket before he got re-injured near the end of the game. And they were getting him on the move and kind of changing his launch point. So it was really encouraging. So it's just very frustrating. And, how much time do we spend in the preseason on this backup quarterback situation on whether it was going to be Trevor Siemian or Jake Browning, and then, like you said, bringing in Will Greer on the practice squad. And here we are 2 games in, the Bengals might have to turn to those guys. I think it's worth getting into, like, if the Bengals should seriously consider sitting Joe Burrow down for a couple games and saying, let's just see if a little bit of rest can maybe get you better so we can have you for the rest of the season, hopefully into the postseason if they're able to make it. I don't know. I don't think Joe Burrow's going to want to do that. It's not any NFL player's attitude, I think, or any NFL players. That's not what they want to do. They want to play every game, but that's why you have head coaches. That's why you have decision makers, I think, to make those long-term decisions for the sake of the team, for the sake of the player. And like you said, this isn't a brutal point of the schedule. So I do wonder, depending on, it's going to have to see what the doctors say. I think the medical opinion will probably take precedence, but just is there any reason that you would sit him down for a couple games and say, let's see what we can do? Now, if they lose a third game with Jake Browning under center, the season's probably over. So maybe they don't want to risk something like that. But I do wonder, dude, is it worth getting him a little bit of rest?
Yeah, I mean, Zach was asked that exact question yesterday, and he didn't dismiss it. He said, we're going to have to wait and see what the doctors say. So it's on the table. I mean, it's absolutely something they might consider. But you're right. It's your chances of winning. I mean, I think Jake Browning has improved as he's been here, but he's obviously, it's a steep cliff from Joe Burrow, even a compromised Joe Burrow, to a healthy Jake Browning. And this is, I know people think it's ridiculous to say must win in September, but this is a must win.
It is.
0-3 is just really, really hard to pull out of. And it always has that caveat where we say, 2.4% of teams that have started 0-3 have made the playoffs. Well, the 17th game changes that. That gives you a little more time to catch up, but still, that's
not a ton more though. It's only one more game. I mean,
it also gives other teams more time to bury.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It's a tough decision, and I don't know which way they're going to go. I don't know. I don't think they know. I think they're going to see how Joe feels later in the week, how he practices. Obviously, he's not going to be 100%. You just have to. Where's that line? Where do you have to feel comfortable of putting him out there at whatever level he's compromised?
And it's not something that Zach Taylor and this staff have really had to deal with, like managing a lingering issue like this. So it's kind of a new challenge for them to have to proceed and see how they deal with this. In the Rams, I think people were writing them off. I think we had them 31st in our preseason power rankings, but they look pretty impressive. I mean, their defense is still a question mark, but they can absolutely put up points. So it's not going to be a cakewalk opponent, especially if Jake Browning is out there on Monday night. There were a lot of player frustrations after the game too. I think there is a sense of, we started 0-2 last year and look, we got back to our second AFC title game. But I think there's also some frustrations, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You wrote about Jamar Chase's comments that he wants more passes down the field. He wants more deep shots. He obviously had a high average depth of target during his rookie season. Last year, teams started playing more cover 2 shells, 2 high shells. His average depth of target dropped to about 9.5. This year, it's dropped to about 7.5. He is well down in terms of how far they're taking shots down the field. Now, that's just on targets, but I think he's right that this offense needs more explosive plays. They did some of that on Sunday, but I think that's an area where they need to grow.
Yeah, to put some context on what Jamar said, he wasn't complaining about his amount of targets and how much he's being used. He said it. He's more than fine to watch T eat. T had the hot hand. He was happy to watch that, especially after the game T had in the opener. But he wants some more deep balls, and it wasn't a criticism of just Zach Taylor and Brian Callahan. I mean, he was kind of pointed to Joe Burrow too, where it's not like they're not sending him out on these deep routes. He was basically saying, this is why we have deep threats. Let's take a chance, throw it up there. Joe's not really a take a chance kind of guy. If it's there, he's going to hit it. He's not going to force it. And I think because of the calf, you're seeing him go through those progressions a lot quicker and not wanting to have to run and extend plays and just going to the check downs and going to the shorter, quicker game. It all makes sense. And then the other thing too, Zach pointed out, which is a good point, that Baltimore knows what Jamar Chase is, and they put all kinds of attention his way to prevent him from getting anything down the field, and that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins are supposed to step up and have pretty good games, and that did happen. And so we'll see if this lingers. I think you're going to see Jamar get it was the opponent. It was what Baltimore does. They play that soft. They're not going to let you get behind them.
Yeah.
That might change this week. And it wasn't just him. Joe Mixon was asked to talk after the game Sunday, and he said no. And I couldn't quite hear if he said tomorrow or later this week, but he did not talk yesterday either. 13 carries in each of the first two games.
Sure.
The last time Joe Mixon had fewer than 14 carries in back-to-back games was week 6 and 7 of 2019. So
I think he's looked good. I think he's looked good in both weeks.
He's looked terrific.
Great burst, great explosion in the open field. Like I've been
tackles.
really impressed. Yes.
And so you wonder there, is that a long game? Is that them knowing he's getting older as a running back and they want to limit his usage to keep him healthy down the road? It's also probably a product of them falling behind in these games, and they're throwing more. If they get a lead early, I think you're going to see them ride Joe Mixon a little bit more. And it wasn't just them. There was, a lot of players after they lost to Cleveland was, hey, we've been in the spot before, we'll be fine. Last week, after the loss to Baltimore, when, hey, you guys have been 0-2 before, there's a lot of, I don't want to talk about the past. Last year doesn't matter. You could tell they were fed up. So the tensions are there. Frustrations are there. It's going to be through the roof if they go 0-3. And if they can beat the Rams, then I think everybody takes a deep breath and we'll see this team. I don't want to say be fine, because you never know what's going to happen with Joe Burrow's calf, but assuming nothing worse happens health-wise, I think they will get it going.
Yeah, it's interesting just talking about Mixon in the run game. I mean, I've seen some people suggest that the Bengals should maybe try more 2 tight end sets and get Joe Burrow under center. And I don't know about you, but I just don't think that's going to happen. That's just not the identity of this team. That's not what was successful for them last season. They're a shotgun-based team. I mean, do you really want the Bengals taking Tyler Boyd off the field and putting in Drew Sample? Like, how much do you really want that to happen? I don't know. I think they're going to stick with what's worked for them, and as long as Burrow can at least be in there, even if he's limited, I don't see it getting to the point where they're going to have to make wholesale changes to this offense, and I don't know that Zach Taylor would be interested in doing anything like that either.
I mean, they've done it in the past. They've made some major changes early in seasons, but I don't think that's what they want to do.
No.
And they've run more 10 personnel with no tight ends. And he was asked, Zach was asked that yesterday, and they don't go 12 because he said we have the best 3 receivers in the league. So we're not taking one of those guys off the field to put another tight end in there, especially when you're talking about a Drew Sample, when you're talking about, I mean, this is not exactly a bunch of Travis Kelce's out there in this tight end room. No. It's a plotting, not more of a blocking group than it is receiving group. And even Irv Smith was supposed to be the guy with the hands and supposed to open up the middle of the field, and he struggled to get anything going so far. So yeah, they're going to continue to be an 11 team and probably a 10 team more than you're going to see any 12.
Yeah. What did you think about Irv Smith yesterday? I know he made a few catches, but yeah, we mentioned that a couple third down plays where he couldn't get his foot down on the one. I think another one, he looked like he could have maybe broken a tackle and gotten a first down. I know people were excited about him, his role on this team. Just, he's got youth, he's got some athleticism, but through 2 games, he's been a little disappointing in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's all been to the perimeter. I thought he was going to be an up the seam kind of guy. I remember the play you're talking about where he had a chance to break the tackle. Yeah. That struck me watching that game. The Ravens just don't miss tackles. There was, I mean, I think Mixon made a guy or 2 miss, but the rest of them, it was first contact and down. And that's where they've been in the past. That's why they play that soft laid back, keep everything
they fly the ball. They just fly the ball. Yeah.
So I give him a pass on that one. I don't know, the sideline one. Yes, he should have come down with it, but that's, a wide receiver, you would be more critical. A tight end, that would still have been a little bit difficult footwork. I don't know if it was a a positioning thing where he just got too wide, or if it was a technique thing where he just didn't get the foot down. But yeah, that would have been a huge play. But he has been a disappointment production wise, because I really thought he was going to be the guy that if teams are focused on taking Jamar and T away, that he could really do some damage up the middle, and we just haven't seen it.
Yeah. Like we said, I don't think Joe Burrow was that bad. Lamar Jackson was just better. Lamar Jackson played like an MVP candidate. He was outstanding. I thought as a passer, as a runner, deep ball to Zay Flowers was beautiful. The Bengals just had really no answers for him. They couldn't contain him. Luckily, they're not going to have to play a Lamar Jackson athlete every week, but the run defense issues on Sunday were a problem. I don't think Lou Anarumo was very happy. We talked a little earlier before the show about his comments on some of the run defense issues. It was really frustrating. I think the Bengals put themselves in good positions on defense quite a bit. And then bad things happened after that, whether it was penalties that wiped out big plays for the Bengals, whether it was getting the Ravens backed up and then allowing a huge play to let them get another chunk of yardage. I think it was first and 20, second and 20 and 3, and they give up a 20-yard pass to Mark Andrews. And it just can't happen. When you get teams backed up like that, you have to execute and you have to finish the drive. I think the defense, you have to say it's a concern through 2 games. I don't know that it's a major concern that can't be fixed. This is, for the most part, a very similar depth chart to what the Bengals had last season when they were a very successful defense. Lou Anarumo, in my mind, is still one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. I'm not that concerned, but man, it was disappointing against the Ravens. I'm glad the Bengals aren't going to have to play a team like that every week.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 sides to it, because week 1, it's Nick Chubb, arguably the best running back in the league, and horrible what happened to him last night. And then week 2, you've got the ultimate unicorn that this league has at quarterback in Lamar. It's just a difficult assignment. And let's not forget, the last 2 times they played Baltimore, Lamar wasn't in there. So it was just a different game. And they did make some points where, Zach said, I can't remember Zach or Lou. One of them said, if we were getting whipped at the point of attack, I'd be concerned. That's not happening. A lot of the big runs that these teams are getting are either scrambles from the quarterback, like we saw Lamar do a few times, or cutbacks. And there was a play in the Baltimore game. There was a play in the Cleveland game. Elijah Moore went right, totally strung out. Everything played right. He cuts it back and then takes off for 18 or 19. So big chunks like that. But you look at overall, I've got some numbers here that right now the Bengals are 31st in rushing yards allowed per game. Last year, they were 7th. Currently, they're 29th in rushing yards per attempt. So you take out the volume aspect, because Cleveland ran it 40 times. So 4.99 yards per attempt they're allowing right now. Last year, they ranked 9th. Again, top 10, 4.19. Currently, they're 32nd in the league in number of rushes of 10 yards or more. They've given up 15 10-plus runs. Last year, they were 7th in that category. They're 32nd in yards before contact. Last year, they were 22nd. So they weren't great at that last year, but still not dead last.
Yeah.
And they're currently 13th in yards after contact. They have tackled well. Last year, they were 2nd in that category. So it's a noticeable drop. And I think the most disappointing thing is you look at those 4 defensive linemen, starting linemen, are all guys that they've paid big money to.
Yes.
Sam Hubbard, BJ Hill, DJ Reader, Trey Hendrickson. Hendrickson twice they've paid now. And then the linebackers, they just paid Logan Wilson. They just paid. So those are the guys. Those are your key guys, and they're not getting it done. So I think that is a concern right now. But again, you do have to consider the small sample size, and you do have to consider the opponent. And I think it's going to be really good for this team to get out of the AFC North. Let's not forget how good they were last year, and they were still 3-3 against this division. It's a meat grinder, and that's been a big part of their struggles. They only lost 1 game outside of the division last year, so I think they're going to be very happy to see a non-AFC North team come to Ball Brown Stadium Monday night in the Rams.
I do think one other concerning thing was that the Ravens didn't even have 2 of their best offensive linemen. Like they didn't have Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, Tyler Linderbaum at center, and the Bengals still really couldn't get any pressure, and they still couldn't stop the run, and they still couldn't contain Lamar. Baltimore still has a good offensive line, even with those 2 guys out. I mean, they have solid players everywhere else, but when a team is missing probably their two best linemen, you would think that could be something that they would be able to attack, and it really didn't happen. Lamar is excellent at avoiding pressure and excellent at scrambling, so you're not going to have to face that every single week. But I think it was disappointing. That luckily, I think the Rams' offensive line is not quite as talented as Baltimore's next week. I'll be curious to see whether if they can just get pressure with the front four, whether Lou ramps up maybe some blitz looks, some simulated pressures next week. We can get into that in a little bit, but I don't think it'll be quite the challenge that it was this week for the Bengals. We did see some rookies get some work on Sunday. Miles Murphy got a pressure. He played a handful of snaps. DJ Turner came in with Cheeto Awuzie still on something of a pitch count. And then Nick Scott got injured, so Jordan Battle played some snaps. It was interesting to see those guys play. I mean, I think it's good to get them the reps, but I don't know. Lou had some interesting comments on how those guys played. What were your thoughts on how those guys looked on Sunday?
Yeah, I was surprised because Lou is brutally honest, and he did. He criticized the long pass to Zay Flowers. He said that was on DJ Turner. He did not get over there in time, and he should have been there to help out Cam Taylor-Britt. There was a play right after Nick Scott went out when Jordan Battle came in, and he said he was the guy, the unblocked guy, and he's supposed to come downhill and stop that. And he was playing soft. He thought it was going to be a pass instead of a run. So just rookie mistakes like that. The Miles Murphy thing is what really surprised me because Lou is willing to criticize guys and be very honest when he's talking to the media. And I know Miles Murphy's taken a lot of heat on Bengals Twitter, and everybody's like, first round pick. He's made no impact whatsoever. Lou is adamant that he is getting better every single week. He is. I don't know if you want to say happy, but he likes what he sees from the progression from Miles Murphy. Now 13 snaps against Cleveland, nowhere to be found on the stat sheet. 19 snaps against Baltimore, nowhere to be found on the stat sheet other than you did say he had the one pressure. But again, that's not all about, defensive line, just like offensive line is a group playing in unison and doing their roles. And I don't know. I wonder what it's going to look like because there's a good chance they get Joseph Osai back this week. And what does that do to Miles Murphy's snaps? It's going to be interesting to watch because I do think that they're counting on Miles Murphy to kind of keep this progression going. And it would seem as though Osai comes back, Miles Murphy would be the guy that might be inactive, but I think you might see a Jay Tufele or a Josh Tupou, one of the backups to DJ Reader, especially against a Rams team with not a great running attack, be the D lineman that gets down. So Miles Murphy can continue to get more snaps and get more experience, but it's all growing pains. You just know what's going to happen. And that's why they were so reluctant to play Dax Hill last year early in the season. They didn't have to. They didn't have injuries. They didn't have reasons to put him in there. The reason DJ Turner is playing so much is because they still got Chidobe Awuzie on a pitch count. So I think long term, this is going to be good. Like I said, growing pains right now, but you look down the road, they're going to benefit from these guys getting all these snaps so early.
Yeah, I think it's a good sign when you don't have to play your first round pick as a starter every week, right? I mean, that's a positive. But how he develops over the season is definitely something to watch. Like you said, if they have defensive ends who can move inside on passing downs, and that creates more opportunities, I think, for Murphy to get on the field. But I don't think he's one of the top 3 defensive ends, obviously, when everyone's healthy. So we'll just have to see how he does. He'll probably get a handful of snaps as the year progresses and see how things go. I think DJ Turner is still impressive. He obviously gave up that big pass, but he's a second-round rookie in a second career NFL game, playing against a pretty talented quarterback. I wasn't too down on him, and we'll see how Jordan Battle does if he needs to fill in for Nick Scott next week. But it's very interesting to see those guys getting snaps. It's not something that the Bengals normally do is see their rookies get a ton of snaps in recent years. So it's interesting to see them at least come into the game a little bit.
And with Jordan Battle, I mean, we could see him again Monday night because Nick Scott has a concussion, and those things they're just impossible to predict. And I thought it was interesting that Nick Scott went in the tent earlier in the game, and it looked like he got his bell rung, and then the red hat went in there. So obviously they were evaluating him for a head injury. As he was in there, he kept the flap kept opening of the blue tent, and he would stick his head out and watch the next play. He was so intent on what the defense was doing and watching the game. I've never seen a guy in the injury tent do that before. But he was cleared. He came back in the game, and then second time he went down hard. It was obvious that he had been stunned, and a lot of guys took a knee, and then they ruled him out pretty quickly with the concussion. So we'll see if he's able to play. But that is something that could be an issue, because you're talking about, you've already got Nick Scott and Dax Hill trying to get a connection, and now all of a sudden you throw a rookie in there in Jordan Battle against a Rams offense that has found a lot of passing yards with Puka Nacua.
Puka Nacua, yes.
I'm going to learn how to say that by the time Monday night comes around.
I just traded a future first round pick for him in my dynasty league, so I'm very familiar with Puka right now. We'll talk about the Rams game in just 1 second, but I do want to go over just the AFC North and kind of where the Bengals stand in the AFC North. You've got the Ravens 0-2, obviously. They're atop the division. The Browns are 1-1 after losing to the Steelers last night. The Steelers are 1-1, and the Bengals are 0-2. But you've written about it. You've talked about it. The one advantage the Bengals have, until Joe Burrow got hurt, obviously, is that they haven't suffered these kind of devastating injuries that the other teams have. Cleveland, obviously, Nick Chubb suffered just a gruesome injury last night. Terrible to see. He seems like a great guy, and he's obviously a great running back. So that's just devastating for them. And they lost Jack Conklin, their right tackle, in week 1. So that's 2 key pieces down. Baltimore feels like every season is just hit by injuries every year. They already lost J.K. Dobbins, Marcus Williams. The safety is going to be out for a while. We mentioned the 2 offensive linemen that were out. Odell Beckham left Sunday's game as well. It sounds like he'll probably be okay. And then Pittsburgh just suffered a handful of injuries last night, too. It was just an absolutely brutal AFC North type game. Yeah. It seemed like, I think that game took 3.5, almost 4 hours, because there were so many stoppages with injuries and everything like that. The Ravens are 2-0, so they're 2 games ahead of the Bengals. It doesn't feel like anyone's like running away with this division yet. It feels like it's still pretty condensed, but I think that those injuries at least give the Bengals a chance to make a comeback like they have in previous seasons. Everything revolves around whether Joe Burrow is going to be available, obviously, but I do think that the state of those other rosters gives the Bengals a chance if they can get things going.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they do these light off-season workouts. That's why they're not in pads as much as some other teams in training camp. It's at the cost of maybe being a little rusty when the season starts, but they view being healthy as better, and that was the case last year as well. You were probably holding your breath. You watched. Cleveland's already lost Jack Conklin, their tackle, and then last night Zadarius Smith looked like he might have been hurt. He came back in the game, and then Myles Garrett was limping around after a play, and it was just like, what is going on? It was just nonstop guys getting banged up in that game, and
Denzel Ward got hurt. Greg Newsome got hurt for a little bit. The corners, just everybody.
And Minka for the Steelers went to the hospital.
True.
So it's. I mean, that if that's a silver lining you're looking for, and not that these guys are getting hurt, but that the Bengals aren't, and that they are, Nick Scott aside, probably going to have all their starters available on Monday. And the caveat that Joe Burrow is a different animal, but
a massive caveat.
Yes. And so, I mean, that gives them, I don't know if you want to say a cushion, but it does kind of buffer a little bit this 0-2 start and being 2 games behind. And you're right. I don't think anybody's going to run away with this division. I mean, right now it's a 1-game lead. It's a 2-game lead on the Bengals, but Baltimore has a 1-game lead on the rest of the division. I don't know that we'll see any team in this division have more than a 2-game lead at any point.
If you look around the rest of the AFC, like the Bills are 1-1, the Chiefs are 1-1. Mm-hmm. The only 2-0 teams are Baltimore and Miami. So it's not like the Bengals have fallen completely behind the pack here. Yeah. If Monday night goes to 0-3, if they go to 0-3 on Monday night, we can start having that discussion. Right now, I think you can't say that the season is over or anything like that. I don't think it's that drastic right now. Things could change on Monday. Let's go ahead and talk about that Rams game while we're on there. Everything's going to come down to Burrow. We've talked about it already, whether he's available or not. If he plays, I feel pretty good about the Bengals' chances. I've been impressed by the Rams this season. This is not the kind of pushover team that I thought they were going to be, but their defense is so anonymous outside of Aaron Donald. I don't think the average fan could probably name more than one other player on that defense.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of backups and rookies and undrafted free agents, but they can put up points. I mean, Matthew Stafford, when he's healthy, I think is still at least probably a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, top 15.
Mhm.
Puka Nacua looks really good. Tutu Atwell looks really good. Kyron Williams looks good. These guys are kind of coming out of nowhere. The Rams kind of surprised the Seahawks in week one. I think they played the 49ers relatively close last week. The final score didn't really show it, but they kept it relatively close until the end. So I don't know. I think if Joe Burrow's in the game, they have a good chance. If Jake Browning is under center against that Rams team, I don't know. I really don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I go back to the Super Bowl 2 years ago because it is the primarily still the same group on defense, at least the front seven for the Bengals.
Yeah.
That was as good as they've ever looked against the run. I mean, they totally shut down that Rams running game in the Super Bowl. And it's a big reason why it was so close, even with Aaron Donald and the rest of the Rams defense just wreaking havoc on the Bengals O-line. So I do think that, if they can do that again and shut down that run game and make the Rams be one-dimensional, that it's going to work in their favor. Like you said, their secondary is a lot of young guys, and I think we saw that offense start to click, the Bengals offense start to click. And if Burrow is in there, even though he's not going to be 100%, I think you would expect to see more of that. And you said name one guy on the Rams defense other than Aaron Donald. It's the Jonah Williams Bowl. The defensive end Jonah Williams is going to be going against Bengals right tackle Jonah Williams.
I didn't even think about that.
Yes, it's so fun to think about that. I mean, you had it a little bit with what was it, Josh Allen, the defensive end for the Jaguars, against Josh Allen, the quarterback of the Bills. It's rare when you see those kind of same name things.
Yeah,
I just like those kind of things.
I think we had that in the World Series a few years ago when Will Smith struck out Will Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that the Bengals have the edge. Let's not forget that opening line of 6.5 came out Sunday night when Vegas knew that Burrow limped off the field and was compromised. They heard his comments. I was stunned to see the line change that much by the next morning. And does Vegas know something that the Bengals aren't telling us, that Burrow's not going to play? Or is that just a matter of a bunch of sharps jumping on the Rams and just forcing that market to crater, and it's down to 1 or 1.5, 2 in some spots. And it's off the board in some spots because of the Burrow unpredictability. But that feels right, that if Burrow plays the Bengals should be about a touchdown favorite in this game. And you can't, it's Ring of Honor night. It's the White Bengal. It's going to be an electric atmosphere, must win at 0-2. I don't see them losing this game if Burrow plays.
If Browning plays, I do wonder how the offense would change, whether it would be, I assume they would lean more heavily on Joe Mixon and try and get that running game going.
Yeah.
I would assume they try and play more quick game and try and get the ball out quickly, and probably not as many deep shots to the chagrin of Jamar Chase. I don't know. I think the offense would have to change if Jake Browning is in there. And he's, we saw in the preseason that he can make things happen. He's not a statue in the pocket. He's mobile. I wonder if they would try and use that to their advantage and try and roll him out a little bit, try and use some more play action, get him out of the pocket. Quarterback draw. I don't know how unique of an offense they would throw out there. I mean, I remember a few years ago when I think it was Jacoby Brissett's rookie season with the Patriots, and they had to turn to him for a couple games, and the Patriots totally changed their offense for Jacoby Brissett for those couple games and really utilized his mobility and they won a big game. And I don't know. Like we said, Zach Taylor and this staff haven't really had to deal with something like this where they've had to. I know Joe Burrow was hurt in his rookie season, but since the Bengals have been competitive, they haven't had to undergo this sort of change under center. So I would be curious to see. I don't want Joe Burrow to miss the game. I think that if he misses the game, the season could be over. I would be curious if Jake Browning is out there to see how they do things a little differently, though.
Yeah. I mean, whether the Bengals put Jake Browning on the run or Aaron Donald puts Jake Browning on the run, I think you're going to see him have to make plays with his feet. And he can. He throws the ball well on the run, and he's just got this a savvy to him. He's not super accurate when he's just sitting in the pocket, but he has a knack for making plays when things break down. And there's a good chance things will break down at some point when Aaron Donald's on the opposing D line. So I don't know if I would say they have no chance to win with Jake Browning, but
Mhm.
obviously the chances go way down.
Yeah. We will get into that next week. If they're 0-3, we'll have some concern here. There's no doubt about that. Um, let's get into our bets and predictions for the week. Jay, you want to recap our bets from last week? I think we all were relatively mediocre.
Yeah, well, we all broke even last week, so that's good when you're
Yeah.
betting.
Yes, that is good.
So you had Ravens plus 3.5. You pissed off all the Bengals
Yeah,
fans and
I
said it,
know.
and you hit it. They won money line. They didn't even need the 3.5 points. You put 10 on that, but then you had 3 on the Chargers minus, or you had 10 on the Chargers minus 3 at Tennessee. Tennessee won that in overtime. Brian Blewis had the Bengals money line and the under, so he lost both legs of that parlay for minus 10.
Sorry, bro.
But he did have Chiefs minus 2.5 at Jacksonville, which he won, and he had Seahawks plus 6 at the Lions, which he won. 5 each on those, so he broke even. And then I had Bengals Ravens under. That didn't happen. And I had Steelers plus 2 against the Browns, which I won thanks to TJ Watt's scoop and score late in that game. So we're back to square one. Brian's in the lead at 0. I'm in second at minus 10, and you're in third at minus 20.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's try and get some of that money back this week. I'm going to go for my Bengals related bet. I'm going to go with the under this week. It's set at 44 at DraftKings. I'm going to take the under. If I had to put money at it, I would say Joe Burrow will play this week. Obviously we don't know. It's a total guess, but even if he plays, I think he'll be limited. And I think the Bengals defense will step up, and I just see this as a lower scoring game. We'll get into our predictions in a second, but I do see this as a little bit of a lower scoring game. And then for my other bet, I'm going to go Patriots minus 3 over the Jets. I just cannot bet on Zach Wilson. I've written way too much this offseason about Zach Wilson and done way too much research into how his numbers over his first 2 seasons stack up historically. TLDR, they're not good. They're very, very bad. Zach Wilson is not good. The Jets have an excellent defense. They are able to pull out and win in week 1, but Zach Wilson versus Bill Belichick defense, in my mind, is a total mismatch, and I just cannot see them coming anywhere near the Patriots. So I'm going to go New England minus 3 over the Jets.
So you can't bet on Zach Wilson, but you can bet on Mac Jones.
Yes, exactly. That makes sense, right? Does that make logical sense?
No, really, it doesn't. Not against that Jets defense. I wouldn't touch that game, but if I did, I would probably have gone Jets.
Okay.
Brian sent his bets in for us. He's going Bills minus 6.5. They're playing Washington in Washington.
Yeah.
Kind of a big number on the road.
Yeah.
And then he's got Bears plus 13.5, which at Kansas City,
I don't know.
That's a big number. I try to not touch those big numbers in the NFL, but I think I think he might be on the wrong side. Kansas City just hasn't looked good yet, and I think they're due for an explosion at some point, and the Bills are a good candidate, or I'm sorry, the Bears are a good candidate to light the fuse. I'm going to make a bet that I don't have the line on yet. I don't know if it's because Burrow's out or if this is typically what they do where the player props don't come out until later in the week, but I'm going Jamar Chase anytime TD in this game. He's been shut down for too long. It has been the familiar defenses that know how to play him. Now you've got a Rams team with a young secondary. I think they're going to find a way, even whether it's Browning or Joe Burrow, that they're going to get Chase involved probably early. I tempted to go first TD, but I don't like those bets because anything can happen. But anytime TD I'll check and see later in the week what the number is and put it in the spreadsheet.
I think that makes a lot of sense just because you could see the squeaky wheel treatment, right? When a guy comes out and says, I want the ball, I want these more targets, you could see we're going to do what Jamar wants. I could see it. And even if the Rams sell out to stop him, with those corners in the secondary they have, I don't think it would matter that much what their game plan is.
My other pick, it's the Armageddon Bowl. I love these kind of things. The 0-2 Vikings and the 0-2 Chargers.
That's a good one.
One of these teams is going to be that 0-3 where it's over. I think the Chargers are headed for an implosion. It started last year in the playoff. Vikings are at home. I thought they played the Eagles pretty well, even despite the 4 turnovers. So I'm going to go Vikings. I think they win that game at home, and it is a pick 'em, so you don't have to even lay points. And I'm going to do the same thing, just 10 on each game.
Now, having said that, would you like to place a bet on whether Brandon Staley is still the Los Angeles Chargers head coach on Monday if they fall to 0-3?
Well, when is their bye week? Because I think he lasts until, if they lose the game before the bye week, then that's when they make the change.
Yeah, I think
and I don't know their coaching staff well enough to know who would be the heir apparent if they moved on from him.
Yeah.
And
bye week is week 5, so that could definitely happen.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, let's get into our predictions for the game. Kind of previewed it a little bit. I'm assuming Joe Burrow is going to play. I think if he can just, he looked so good last week. I was so impressed by what he was doing, layering those throws. If he can just be out there and even be at 75%, I do think the Bengals can pull this game out, but I think it'll be close. I'm going to go Bengals 21, Rams 20. I think it'll be really low scoring. I think it's going to be tight. If Jake Browning plays, I reserve the right to edit this prediction, but I'm going to go Bengals 21, Rams 20 for now.
I'm right there with you for all the same reasons, except I'm going 23-20. I'm just going to flip the Super Bowl score. So Bengals 23, Rams 20 instead of the other way around. That'll make up for that Super Bowl 51 loss for all the Bengals fans, I'm sure.
Yes. We love revenge here. That's we love revenge games. So let's hope the Bengals could do it. That'll do it for this week, Jay. Another great conversation. Everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like us and follow us. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please give us a review. And come check out Pro Football Network. Jay's doing amazing writing every week on the Bengals. We've got just general NFL writing. We've got a ton of fantasy content if you're trying to do waivers this week and trying to bolster your team. With all these injuries, we've got all the information you can want. College football, NFL. Come check us out. Jay, you and I will be back next week. Podcast might be coming a little bit later next week with the Bengals playing Monday night, that late game. There are 2 Monday night games. But we will be back at some point. Whether Bengals are 0-3 or 1-2 will definitely affect the tenor of our conversation. But we will be back next week. Jay, anything else before we sign off?
No, just these late games. My goal is always to not be fighting rush hour traffic the next morning's workday when I leave the stadium. I'm hoping to be home by about 3 or 4 in the morning. So we'll record a little later in the day on Tuesday, but we will still have a podcast for you guys, win or lose.
Jay needs his beauty sleep. I think we all know that. So we will let him get that before we come to you next week. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. We will talk to you next Tuesday.